All right, listen up, Spuds. This is Zap Brannigan, master of time, space, and everything else in between. And, winner of this year's Modesty Award. You're listening to You Suck. What's the difference with Al and Tom? Your one stop for this sort of thing.
I love that every week. Every week.
Oh, I know.
Tom's bopping it.
It's catchy, first of all. Second of all, I'm like, that's fucking Zap Brannigan saying my name right there. And yours too, I guess. Yours too, I guess, Al. I mean, but it's not as exciting, go figure, for me to hear your name coming out of his mouth than his mine. When I hear mine, is when I'm like, oh my God, he knows me.
Guys, welcome to What's the Difference podcast. I'm Alex Whiteley.
And I am Tom Bruno.
And today we've got... We're back to recording a show and then releasing it that week, which is we were recording batch episodes and then releasing them as the month will go on. But I feel like we've done this at the perfect time because Jenny Black, who's our guest today, again, shout out to TV Guestbert for helping us organize this. For the guys that don't understand where TV Guestbert comes from, Bibbs Cameron and Tommy Tomczewski, who I've worked with in Shrewsbury here. Bibbs is part of the Civic Society. She looks after old buildings, make sure they don't get knocked over. She's amazing, right? And we did this thing in Shrewsbury, and Billy was like, hey, my daughter-in-law's got this thing called TV Guestbert. Maybe you should speak to her. Started speaking to Jackie Jordan, and we had her on the show, and we've started this relationship where they suggest guests for us to speak to, and it's like this symbiotic thing now. We love the guests, and they love us talking to them. So thank you, Jenny, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce what it is you do, Jenny, first? Because I do want to get onto what's going on in the UK at the moment and why I think you're important.
Okay, so I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in Nashville, Tennessee, or in the state of Tennessee, actually. And several years ago, I started seeing a pretty significant shift in the mental health issues that were coming into my office. And I started going through some of my own issues and took a break about 5 years ago and realized that I had this really complicated, overwhelming, exhausting relationship with my phone. And so that just got me starting to study. This is kind of really messed with me and affected me. And I really did think that it was just me, that I had some sensitivities because everybody else seemed to be okay. And that started, I had two high school students at the time, that just started me doing a tremendous amount of research on how it was changing us, how it was changing our relationships, and how it was impacting our mental health. And of course, I came up with the term media trauma, because I was seeing people traumatized, not just by things they were seeing on the media, but by the way they were, the way our culture expects someone to be engaged at the level, that kind of 24/7 engagement. And that people, I will say I specialized in abusive relationships, and I was watching people have the symptoms of having been in an abusive relationship simply by the way they were engaging their media. And so that's kind of what we talk about, what we teach people, what we're really trying to help therapists understand what's coming to their office and how we can help.
See, that's very interesting, actually, because I have a buddy who's very into the news. Like he is news driven. That's all he does. And he likes to interpret his own stuff in the news. That's fine. You know, he's a very interesting dude. At least he puts in the research behind the stuff that he says. Usually when people make bold and outlandish claims, I'm like, oh, that's nice. And where's your information based from? He's like, well, I watched a YouTube clip. At least this guy, watches actual news and then derives his own conclusions from watching the news. But the thing is, like, I told him, because he's like, well, did you see X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I really don't pay attention. And he's like, how can you not? Like, he got really kind of like up with me, not in a bad way, but not like, I guess not in an aggravated way, but in a way of like, not even aggravated. I guess not in a way of like he was offended, but in a way of he's like, how could you not do this? I'm like, man, it's just so depressing nowadays to just turn on the news and everything's negative. There's nothing positive really anymore unless you watch, certain things. So I just don't pay attention. And it seems like that's like everyone, because we have such an ease at being able to view the news, and because social media is a real prevalent thing. And if you're not completely entwined in it, people think that you're strange. Is that across the boards, or is that just something I'm experiencing?
Yeah, no, that I hear a lot of that. Like, I'm supposed to stay informed and I grew up in a time where information was power, right?
Yes.
And so now we're in this, and that's true. That was true when we got information about things that were going on in different places of the world, or even places in our neighborhood. That enabled us to take action to do something about it. And that is like, if information could be a gift, that's it, right? You get the information. Hopefully, if you're an empathetic person, you have empathy about the situation that prompts you to do what you can to help the situation. So now we live in what's way beyond the information age, but we live in complete information saturation, run by media that makes all of its money on us watching it. We watch when we're afraid. When we are scared, we stay hooked to our screens. They make more money if we're scared. And that's part of the design of the algorithm. So to keep us, if we get happy and relieved and we start thinking life is okay, we will turn it off and we'll get back to our real life, and they won't make any money. So the whole deal with information is that we only have a capacity for so much empathy. Like any of us, because we only have resources for caring for so many people and situations. And so you do need information. You do need to know, especially locally, things that you could do in your community, your family, things that you could do to care or make a difference. And if you're getting more information than you have the capacity to care about, then it starts actually creating almost like this psychopathic, like, I can't handle this. I don't think I care anymore. I don't even think I feel. This is ridiculous. Let me just drown myself back in my screen because there's nothing I can do about how terrible everything is.
I mean, I think for me, it varies with my different stress levels. Because like, I can be sat at the laptop and be like, oh, I've got a million things. You know, when you've got like, I don't know, 12 things to do in an hour and you're kind of like, oh my God, you don't know where to start. I find myself, I'll look at Facebook, I'll put it down, I'll do one thing, and then I'll pick it up and I look at the exact same thing I just looked at. And then put my phone, it's repeat. And you know, I don't mean to sort of advertise another company while speaking to you, but this is
advertise another company, please.
Because I work with the Shrewsbury Biscuit. It's my other podcast, and it's all about positive stuff. The positive news, because I think it's really important to share about what's going on in my hometown. That's great. And one of the things is Tech Timeout in Shropshire here, in Shrewsbury, run by Stephanie Henson. And you know, this is the similar thing that you're talking about. You know. And they give you, I haven't got mine, but I said I would take on the challenge. But my problem is I work a lot with social media. But like I said, it's like this little pocket. You put your phone in and you chuck it to the other side of your desk and you leave it for X amount of hours and you go about your day. Because they feel like it makes you healthier. Your social media, your mental health will get better. And, you know, especially your sleep patterns. It affects your sleep patterns. This is a thing that people are starting to recognize right now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been watching. We were talking about the Many Saints of Newark with, and there's a point to this thing. Trust me. We're watching the trailer from Many Saints of Newark, which is a Sopranos story, which is a continuation, or at least like a prequel to the Sopranos as we know. And I'm watching it, and the Sopranos was made late '90s, like before 2000s, and cell phones were cell phones, but they weren't what they are now. Now they are a personal computer in your pocket that you have the ease and the access to the internet, your beck and call, everything you want, Google News, social media, whatever have you. But this is made in like '99. And like their family conversations, while of course being loud and full of vulgarity and all that type of stuff, is also zero cell phone use, like almost zero. You virtually never see them go like this.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting, and we were talking how it is technically a period drama, and how important that is. And I'm like, wow, like I forgot there was a time where that wasn't a thing. It's become so everyday type of situation where the cell phone is just there that we kind of take it for granted. There was a time that there was not. Have they ever like looked at the intrinsic like evidence of this is what the average family happiness level was in 1980 compared to like 2000? They ever do something like that? Maybe you would know better than I.
That's a great. We should Google that and figure out, or DuckDuckGo that and figure out if there is any research about it. Because first of all, that's a fascinating idea. I have a dumb phone. So my phone's essentially a more functional flip phone. So it's really just calls and texts and, calculator and clock. And it's true. The only time I pull it out is to look at the time, right? But that's so interesting to think in those days when we all just had cell phones, were we pulling them out? Because we really use them as a connector. We use them to get to people. So if we were with people, we still were in that mindset of the goal is to get with the person, not get with my phone,
We were driving through Shrewsbury very slowly. I was driving. My wife's there. My mother-in-law's in the back, and we're driving slowly through the town. You can see like couples and stuff sat outside drinking, enjoying some lunch in the sun, right? And she's very blunt. My mother-in-law, your typical South American, will tell you how it is, but is a lovely lady, right? And she was like, you can tell the couples that have been together for a long time, because they sit there staring at their phones and don't look at each other. It's true. It's one of those things that you see across a restaurant or a pub or something. And you're like, wow, the chemistry is great there, isn't it? It's just insane.
Do you remember that scene? And once again, I'm deriving everything from the media that I consume. Remember that scene in Pulp Fiction with Mia Wallace, and she's talking to John Travolta, and she says that there's something about the comfortable silence, right? Like if you're so comfortable with somebody, you're able just to stop trying to force the conversation. You can just enjoy being in the presence of one another. I really do agree with that. Like me and my wife have been together like almost 16 years, like not married 16 years, but we've been together 16 years as a couple. And I think there's nothing wrong with having like a little bit of silence to actually think about what you're going to say and all that type of stuff. But with the cell phone, with having this personalized computer at your beck and call, it's so easy to fill that void because not everyone is comfortable with silence, because sometimes silence can just be deafening, right? Like, and it just can be too much on your emotions. And should I be saying something? What's this person thinking? So it's so easy to shut down those thoughts by just drowning it out with the phone. And I think that kind of bleeds over from that type of situation into an everyday of every second type of deal. Like my wife, I love her to death. And she's recently gotten TikTok with my daughter, which I find to be excellent. It's like a really cool connective tissue between the two.
Right.
My daughter loves it because everyone says TikTok. My wife loves it because of the funny videos. So now they make their own TikToks and they show them to one another. And I think that's brilliant. I think that's excellent. But it also seems to consume like her sleeping time. So like I go to work at 10 o'clock at night because I work the night shift, same as Alex. And I'll go, like, if this was, like, let's say 4 months ago before she even realized what TikTok was, or maybe didn't use it, she would be in bed, passed out by that time. Like, I'd have to be like, hey, I love you. Mwah, goodbye. And I run out the door. Nowadays, she's still like this, glued to her phone. I'm like, hey, I'm going. She's like, yep, love you. And I'm like, are you going to go to bed anytime soon? Like, are you insomniac now? So it's very interesting to see what this is kind of doing to everyone in the positive and the negative way. It's interesting.
Well, you talked about comfort being silent, finding silence and comfort with another person. I think it's also really about finding comfort in the silence of yourself. Like, I think that's something that we're losing a tolerance for, of just being alone with your own thoughts. And it ties back to what you just said about happiness. I don't know that we can ever actually research if someone was happier, if a family was happier or a connection was stronger or whatever. We could do connection, but happiness, I think one of the things that social media has done is make everyone hyper aware of how happy they are, how good things are. And so I think when I was growing up, there wasn't an assumption I could be doing something amazing right now when I was sitting in the doctor's office while my parents were in an appointment. I didn't have any paradigm that life should be happier or more interesting, where now I think we're constantly seeing there's some way my life could be better, which trips that thing in us of being unhappy, even though we might have actually been happy.
Yes. I concur with that. No,
we've always had like this like sort of nudge to, I don't know what it is, talk about the doctor's office and stuff like that, but it leads me to talk about sort of gossip mags and those kind of horrible things where they're like, look how fat Kate Winslet looked in this dress, and there's always been something there to be like, hey, are you really enjoying life? Would you like to not be happy? Here, read this magazine. It's just like there's always been this thing. I don't know what it is. Maybe What?
At least with the benefit of the gossip mags, like you can put those down, right? You might run into an article where you're like, "Oh, this is boring," and I'm now going to put down OK Magazine or whatever it is. The thing about the cell phone is like you can
No.
find
I want to
things
find out what
to keep
Karen
you-
left Dave for her brother, the Undertaker.
Exactly. Well, this magazine thinks that Kate Winslet's fat. Let's see what the other 16 websites thinks about Kate Winslet being fat at the same exact time. So then you just continue where it might have been like 5 minutes of your time. Now it is 30 minutes of your time.
Right. And there's also a choice. Like, I would like to read more about this, where so much of what we're getting is like, I didn't want to hear that story. I don't care about that. But I heard it anyway.
I'm not affected. And don't get me wrong, that's not to say I don't have my own issues. Like, whereas I'm not glued to my phone, I'm kind of glued to my headphones more because I do a lot of chores around the house, right? Like I help with, I do dishes, I clean up after the kids, I fix the car, whatever I might be doing. I have my headphones in. I'll be listening to a book. I'll be listening to a podcast. I'll be doing something to kind of like keep my mind off the fact that I'm doing mundane chores, which I feel is okay as long as I could do like this so I can hear everything else, so I can engage with my family. I don't see a real problem, even though I'm still disconnecting from everything. So I'm just as bad as everyone else. But when it comes to screen time, I don't log in that many hours. I don't have games on my phone. And that's not to say, actually, excuse me, I have one game on my phone so my kids can play it because I'm like, here you go, there you go. It's all good. But when I get home, I have no problem just kind of putting it down and sliding away. My drug of choice has never been the cell phone. I feel kind of bad when I see others that just can't do that. It must be everywhere, like because your happiness level is derived from the connections that you're making on social media, and the more likes you get, the happier you are because everyone seems to be thinking the same thing you are. And I just seem to kind of miss out on that. I don't know if that's a generational thing. Do you find that this happens across like the board with everyone, no matter what age, or is it like certain age groups?
Yes, but for very different reasons. Like we're seeing like 60 and 70-year-olds are just very, very, very connected to Facebook. And they have that, like, I want to see my friends and my family, and that's how I'm getting my news. You have a lot of, I would say, high schoolers and middle schoolers. TikTok is a big thing, and elementary school kids. So it's interesting to watch, like when Snapchat was kind of like, oh, that all of the high schoolers are on Snapchat. Like there's these almost underworlds of like, this is how I connect to my peers around the world through this platform. And we kind of all have these rules and know how things function. And it's fascinating to watch how different each generation is engaging in this and how differently it's affecting them.
Who seems to be the most ill affected by this? Would you, if you were to take a guess, I mean, just in your own like
definitely millennials. Sorry.
You think so?
Well, millennials are, at least the research is showing that they're the most conscientious about it. Like they are the kind of leading the charge and like taking days off and setting boundaries and that kind of thing. But I do feel like it's, like I said, I'm in my mid 40s. I feel like it's my generation that really, like, my kids got to high school without cell phones. So I have a pretty firm, it's almost like my generation is, I'll say I'm the first iPhone parent. Like I'm the beginning of the generation whose kids got their first iPhones, and they weren't even really around until my kids were in 8th grade. So they got to 8th grade, and y'all will like to know my son, who's 22 now, who just graduated from college. He and his friends say they believe they were the last generation who will have a childhood.
That is interesting.
They love that they had a childhood without phones.
I feel like there is a lot of pressure out there for parents, at the moment, because we see the negative side effects of social media. If you don't see it, I mean, I was going to say, if you don't see it, you're an idiot. But there are people that are genuinely just oblivious to what's going on around them, and they're the people that you're trying to help, I guess, Jenny. But like, when it comes to my kid, he does watch a lot of YouTube. He enjoys it, but social media is going to be a completely different thing for that, because my child, I want him to remain as innocent as possible for as long as possible. He's so he has that absolute innocence. He's 6, and I want him to remain that way for as long as possible. I want to cherish that. So, he can watch YouTube and enjoy that because it really has helped him in his development. But at the same time, Facebook and all, and what have you, TikTok even, no, not for a while yet.
The boundaries I set for my kids is like I let them do YouTube, of course, because I mean that's where all the videos are. It's free. It can be, I think it's really interesting to kind of show the creativity you can extend. Like, and here's like a good example. We of course had it sort of kind of not the social media aspect, but we knew what independent film was. We knew that there were ways and avenues that we could make stuff our own without having big budgets. So that was like the first little introduction to being able to do so. Where YouTube is like the complete guerrilla warfare of making your own content and being able to curate your own content and give it to people that want to view your content. So like I like the example that people show, like, oh, you can make anything you want out of nothing and still garner a following, which is healthy and cool because like in the same way that like my daughter, she loves TikTok to death. She would be showing me her TikTok videos that were emulating other famous TikTokers. And I was like, that's cool, Ilya. Like, I love that to death. But here's the thing. I'm like, if you're going to do this, I want you to at least once a week make your own TikTok, not something you saw somebody else do, not something that you're trying to emulate. So I want you to think about it, make it, and show me that one. I'll watch the other ones too, but I want to see that one specifically. And I want to kind of see where your mind's at and what are you doing with it. And if it's, I'm never gonna sit there and be like, that's horrible. Get out of here with your show me the other TikToks again. They were better. But I would like to be able to see where your creativity is and try to help you, establish what it is that makes you you. I think that's the healthy way. What do you think?
You're hitting on my number one concern. I do think creativity and imagination are endangered because of exactly what you're talking about. And my biggest concern, and this is so big in therapy right now, there's so much time spent consuming content, consuming other people's thoughts, feelings, problems, that we are now seeing clients, specifically in middle school and high school, show up to therapy presenting literally the issues and the sentences of what they're watching. So it's like this complete, it is not like I saw this on TikTok and it made me think, oh, I might have that problem too, and I'm going to go talk about it in therapy. It's literally like watching someone mimic what they've seen, as if there's the way that it comes at them and the amount of time they're spending on it, it almost as if they're adopting the self of the person they're watching and then going to therapy with that. And it's really kind of freaking therapists out because they're like, what is this? Like, how do we even unpack
it's almost
this?
A cult mindset at this point, right? Like you can see exactly why things like Jonestown and like the Manson family and all that type of stuff happens with people. And I'm not whoa. No, I'm not. I think it's not a huge leap. I don't think it's a huge leap at all. I think that if you listen to somebody enough and you respect them enough, it's not hard to take on other people's ideals and, kind of like through osmosis, take on people's like thoughts and beliefs and feelings. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all. And I think if you look at some of the people that joined up with these things, they that wasn't who they were in the beginning, of course. That's who they became. And if you spend enough time listening and kind of absorbing this stuff, it's not hard to connect those two dots at all. Jenny, you're the expert. What do you think?
Well, it also has that's why it's so significant, the isolation of it. If you are now relating like in a cult, you have to stop relating to anyone except this one way of thinking. So whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or even YouTube, like the point is any one stream of thing that you identify with is never going to be healthy, right? You've got to have, I've got family, I've got friends in this country too. I have people who have these different opinions than me. Like that's part of what keeps us sane, like having differences.
There's something going on in the UK at the moment that I think you might be able to help out with because it's a rabbit. I mean, like, if someone's going to listen to this now and they're wondering, okay, let me explain the situation, right? BP, British Petroleum, came out in the week and said they're struggling for drivers because there's a lorry driver shortage over here in the UK to run their tanks, to fill up their petrol, their gas or whatever. And it caused everyone to suddenly think, oh my God, there's no petrol or no gas. So now the queues for the bit like what happened in Florida a few months ago, the queues for the gas stations, petrol stations are now around the corner. People are emptying like gas stations, and the BBC are going, yes, we're stood outside a petrol station right now, and as you can see, the forecourt is absolutely full. You've got Lad Bible doing things on it. You got everybody's reporting on this thing, and people, myself, I saw a guy filling up a jerry can, like not just a jerry can, like a bloody brick house foundation full of petrol. And this woman came across the forecourt and was like, "You can't do that. I'm very sorry." This thing is going insane. And I feel like social media is the absolute core of the problem here. How do you tell someone to switch off from that?
So it depends on their level of saturation. I have not done any personal research on this, but this is what I see every day. The more time someone spends in the digital space, usually the more scared they are, and the more they think the world is a bad place to be. So sometimes, like with some of my clients, we start with just 1 hour a day that there's no media. That would be like a place to start. Like one of my clients said, I'm going to wake up for the first hour of my day, not look at my phone, and see what happens to my day. Just giving myself that time with myself. And that's pretty life-changing for someone who is, addicted every hour that they're awake. But then for a lot of, if my clients can handle it, I always recommend taking a dopamine fast for 24 hours. If you can find 24 hours where you're like, and Tom, this would be no music, no podcasts, like literally giving your brain and body the chance to reset itself. Because one of the things we're not talking about is the fight or flight that our bodies go into. Like we get in that kind of hypervigilant, anxious state when we're constantly engaging with things. And this doesn't even have to be media. It could just be text. It could be just checking things. It could just be that I'm always on, I'm always responding, I'm always reactive. There's always another thing to do. And then by the time we set it down, we just pass out, right? We check out or pass out, and then we start over again. Well, that is affecting our nervous system. Like that's not even about what we're watching. Like we have that tension that's being held in our bodies and our brains, and our bodies desperately need to get out of that emergency mode. It's not a real emergency, but our bodies don't know that. And so I really recommend a 24-hour dopamine fast to give your body a chance to literally reset itself and to feel what calm feels like again. What do I feel like when I'm not in that hypervigilant state? It's boring, it's depressing, and it's coming down off of a high we've all been on.
Yes, it depends where you are, I guess. Not where you are physically, but where you are mentally. Like when I go on vacation, generally speaking, I have this big thing where, we're supposed to be together here as a family. I don't really support the usage of a lot of cell phones. The problem is some of our best cameras are now on our cell phones. So I made it a point this last big family trip where I bought a GoPro and I have like normal analog camera and all that type of stuff. And I use those instead of using my phone 24/7 because you take out your phone to take a great picture of your family. And then before you know it, you're like, oh shit, what happened to so-and-so today? And then you're on your phone. Whereas if you have the ability just to do what you came to do in the first place, which was be with your family, take the pictures of your family, take the videos of your family, and still upload them, still put them everywhere you need to when you're done, but not at that moment fall back into the same tropes that made you or at least made me realize that I was disconnecting from my family. I think that's at least a healthy place to kind of start for, the purpose of trying to get away from the phone. Do you think that's something that everyone should maybe do?
I think that we have gotten so lost. Like Alex, you were talking about how you have to be working on social media for a certain portion of your job. So we all have these things that are either functional or necessary or beneficial to our lives that get completely overwhelmed with a bunch of things that aren't functional, aren't beneficial, whatever. And so that's one of the reasons I recommend the dopamine fast, is because once you get 24 hours away from it, you realize what you actually need. Like, what do I need and how do I want to use this? And what could I do to use it and not get sucked in by all these things that are just not good for
It'd
me.
be really hard, though. I imagine it'd be really, really hard because, when I'm at work, I work by myself, right? And the hardest things for me to do was to sit in an office by myself I do a 13-hour night shift, right? I'm a support worker. Once the kids are in bed or, 2 o'clock in the morning goes quiet, it's like, it's really different. I'm kind of like, and sometimes I can go for like night shifts that feel like they've been for an eternity. I'm kind of like,
imagine, yeah.
Yeah, and you do a lot of thinking. You do a lot of thinking, and there was a time when it really affected me, which is when I went on to listening to podcasts, and I started making them. It's
Right, right.
It's a difficult situation, but the reason I wanted to make the podcast was to help people. Okay, so I've gone from this I need something to deafen the silence to I am going to be righteous and try and help the people that need my voice in their lives.
I will wield this evil sword, and I will make lives better for all. Jenny, join me in my crusade for helping Europe.
Yeah.
But Alex, I think what's really important in that story is that there was silence, there was boredom, which revealed some sort of restlessness, which is kind of where the energy for creation comes. And that's part of that, what I'm talking about, creativity being endangered, is because if we're constantly consuming, the best we can create is some other version of exactly what we've consumed, which is why you're addressing that issue with your daughter, Tom. So that's why I've done the dopamine fast. One time I did it with my daughter when she was still living at home. She said it was her favorite day of the whole year because in that space, she was all of a sudden, wait, I just remembered that I love to do this or I want to do this, because you have your own attention on yourself and your capabilities and your desires, which we're missing out on when we're staying so tuned to everyone else's.
That happens to me quite a lot, to be honest. I come up with ideas and I'm like, will you just fucking stop it, Alex? Like, because I have all these ideas, I write them down on a pad and I want to do them all at the same time.
I know.
And then I burn myself out.
I know.
How is this like? Because obviously you've got a website, you've recorded podcasts, and for this thing, you've written books, and you've done all sorts of things to promote what you're doing. So there's a lot of like staring at screens, I imagine, that's required to do your job. How was that as a transition for you?
I would say it's about using your technology for your purposes. Yeah. That's it. That's all it is. I have very little input, like my email, right? That's the only in on my screens. Otherwise, I'm staring at a blank screen that I have to fill with content, or I'm choosing what I'm going to research. So I just, in the conversation you said about happiness, like it's blowing my mind, the things that I find when I start by like, wait, what do I wonder about? What am I writing about? And then I search, I'm able to search for things that will never get said to me because I knew what. Does that make sense?
Guess, absolutely. And going back to what you said about the dopamine, 24-hour dopamine, like what was the fast? Thank you very much. Sorry, once again, still asleep. I guess I correlated to like my mom. My mom has always been like, she's a very social person. I love my mom to death, but she's also the same girl that would, she'd bring a book with her everywhere. So there was never a time that she'd get bored. So I guess I always try to correlate my listening to books or my listening to podcasts, the gaining of information through that, not through a viewing way, but in a way of like I'm absorbing it that way. I guess I was trying to like, connect the two and be like, okay, so I'm just essentially doing what my mom did all those years, except that I don't have a physical book. I have this whole library in my pocket, and that's what I'm doing. But I guess it's, as much as I'm trying to think of myself as like a better creature, I'm really just the same as everybody else. I'm just looking for it in a different place. Like,
and the truth is you're choosing your media. That's a big deal. You're choosing your books, you're choosing your podcasts. That's significant. It's not just being fed to you by like the next thing. It's also not that brain stimulation in the same way that say TikTok is. Like it's an audio experience. So you still have access to your other senses. And it's still input. Like all of us need some time where we're listening to what's going on inside of us and getting some information from deep inside, not just from outside.
But here's the other side to that coin, though. And thank you for saying that. Here's the thing is like I tend to notice that I'll go back to the same books over and over again. Like very rarely will I branch out and try something new. I have a few new books in my Audible that I have not even checked out yet. I bought them because the synopsis is brilliant. I'm like, oh, that sounds excellent, and the narrator is fantastic. This is gonna be a great experience for me. But I'll go back to the same things I've listened to before because I love them, and that's because they're gonna fill me with great feelings, and because I'm gonna get this level of excitement and sorrow and everything else.
Tom Bruno runs deeper than that, Mister.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. So I think that's like kind of like it ends up being all the same thing at one point or another. I'm just really looking for that high of the experience, I guess.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's what we're all addicted to right now is just novelty, right? Anything that can take us out from what did you say, Alex? Whatever the boring thing that you have to do, right?
Yeah.
I have to send that email, or I've got to change that credit card number or whatever. No, how about I go look at something that just is bubblegum, basically, because my brain has such little tolerance for the boring tasks of life.
The analogy I use for like loss of creativity, which happens to me an awful lot, you know, if I'm working on 5 or 6 podcasts, which I will be sometimes, editing 5 or 6 podcasts a week, sometimes 2 at a time, whilst doing artwork, whilst scheduling, blah blah blah. I like to be busy, right? But sometimes my head will get like gooey. It's like, you know, when you got PVA glue in your fingers, and you know. The analogy I use is having Christmas every day. You have Christmas every day. You used to get given presents. You're like, oh, okay, another present. Fuck off. Like, you know, whereas like if you starve yourself with dopamine, you kind of start, I guess, enjoying things a bit easier.
You do. Well, when you starve yourself of dopamine, you start looking for ways. First of all, it gets exciting to think, I could organize that junk drawer. That actually sounds fun.
Yeah.
Like, that might give me a little hint, right? A little hit of something. But you start looking for ways that you can create that in your own reality instead of it. The thing that's so terrible about it, right, is not just that we're constantly feeding on that, as one of my friends says, the IV drip of dopamine. But it's that so often that hit that makes us feel good is also not making us feel good. Like if we could always just go and find things that felt good, that would be one thing. But that's not what's happening.
By the way, I always have to explain. I should explain this before. When I do that, I'm like, that's not me going, will you kindly be quiet? That's me going, Tom, I'm next. Sit back, relax, right?
Yes. See, we to avoid going to a marriage counselor as we have, we developed communication. Exactly. Yeah, we use fingers. We're back to the end.
Don't do a whole podcast just teaching couples your secret language. That would really do well.
Except I can't bring it in my own marriage for some reason. I can't be like, Shona, no, my turn to talk. I rose the finger. She's like, fuck your finger. I'd be like, but this works with Alex.
There we go. I've got a finger there that's got a frowny face and a finger with a smiley face. There we go. We'll do that.
Wait, so what does the finger with the smiley face mean?
It means I love you, Tom. That means shut the fuck up. No, there's this episode of Black Mirror that I absolutely adore. It's one of the latest ones, actually, of the last series. And I'm sorry to use pop culture
I love it.
But there's an episode with a guy who's threatening to kill a hostage until he speaks to like the owner of a social media conglomerate type thing, and he's on like a 3-month silence retreat, right? He's up on some mountain somewhere. He's not spoken for 3 months, and some guy's waving a photo at him going, this guy is going to kill this lady or this guy unless you answer this phone and speak to him. And he's like, he's trying to find, and I guess, right, he's done that. People do these things, these silence retreats to try and find answers to things, because I've heard of these things. I don't know why I brought that up, to be honest. I just thought it was really funny. And
I thought you were going to bring up the pig fucking episode, which is number one.
I was like,
yes. I was like, whoa, where's he going with this? I love it. I don't know where he's going, but I'm stoked he's going there.
Not on a TV guest episode. Jackie Jordan would be like, no, Alex Whiteley's done. No. He's done. He's not having anymore.
Well, my favorite episode is the one with Dallas Howard and the stars.
Yes.
I mean, it's a beautiful
That would have been better.
Yeah, that's the episode.
That would have made so much sense.
That is the episode to watch, because even when it came out, I mean, that show is so prophetic. It's like they're right ahead of what actually starts happening in society. And but that one is like, it was.
No, that was that. No, that was yes. I
That
agree.
one-
Sorry.
No,
I'm
Okay.
confused.
I was
Right,
like,
right.
we're getting our sign language confused now. We need Coco the gorilla to come here and start painting for us and shit. We'll get this figured out in a day or so. So come back tomorrow, Jenny. We'll have this figured out.
No, you're right, Jenny. That episode is stunning. Yeah,
And it is our reality now. It was not our reality when it came out, but now it's not even satirical.
No, especially not with
It's
TikTok.
literally the ranking. Like you're being ranked in such ways that are affecting all sorts of other things in your life.
To jump off a little bit, what do you think about the correlation between the rise in ADHD and the fact that the media that we consume now seems to be in less than 3-minute bits? What do you think about that?
Oh, that was brilliant, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
It's so real. It's so real. So I keep saying the research is not going to be fast enough for we know the research. We know the research. Like our bodies know the research. Parents know the research. Teachers, you're watching it happen in your class or in your doctor's office or therapist's office. And my sister was just saying she was trying to see how long she could count. She was trying to get herself to go to sleep, which is difficult for a lot of people.
I do that. I do that too.
And she said, Jenny, I couldn't. She said, Jenny, I couldn't count past 60 before I would lose focus.
Oopsies.
And she's like, that has happened since I started doing TikTok. It's changing my brain's capacity to stay focused on something more than 60 seconds.
And here's the interesting thing. My wife has always had very crippling ADHD. Like the fact that she's made it to adulthood and been she's a very, very successful lady, far more successful than I am. And she's she runs the house. She does all sorts of things. She's an amazing woman. I love my wife to death. And she has very crippling ADHD. And she was very heavily medicated up until the point she was in her later teens, which when I look at the dosage, our daughter has it as well, but we refuse to medicate her. We're like, that's a decision you're going to make when you get to a certain age. And if that's something you feel that you need, we will support you in that, but until then, we're not going to dope you just to kind of get you to be what we consider a perfect kid or whatever it might be. We don't believe in that. But it's interesting that my wife's found a way to deal with it, and she's still of course manages business, all that type of stuff. But her media of consumption is TikTok, very, very short, very quick, very lightning fast. And so this morning we were laying together. I was going to bed. She was up and taking care of the house, where she was, setting up something. But normally it would be she'd be watching TikTok and I'd be watching Sopranos. And I'm like, so it's interesting to see where your mind is and how much you want to consume. Whereas my mind wants to consume this very long 45-minute drum. Yeah. Exactly. And I don't know why that is. I don't know, because she's only 3 years younger than I am.
So I talk about this a lot with my clients and in different talks that I do. It's really important that everybody understands their own vulnerabilities. We have some shared vulnerabilities just as humans, but we also have really specific vulnerabilities. So if you have a tendency to be obsessive, if you have a tendency to be addictive, if you have a tendency for ADD, your consumption of media and the platforms that you use need to be carefully considered, and for how they feed it. And you're naturally going to be drawn to platforms that help you to be obsessive or that help, match your short attention span or whatever.
Do you think these businesses, maybe not so backhandedly, but do you think these businesses actually curate their stuff for this? They have a thought process, this will really grab the attention of the people this attention.
Absolutely. If you are not familiar, anyone in the media, anyone doing anything on the media should be familiar with the term, the attention economy. We live in an attention economy. All money is being made based on how long eyeballs are on particular screens. That is the business model. It is attention. Attention is how everyone's making money. And every human, that's just the business model. That's the marketing classes. That's how the platforms are designed. That's how the algorithms are set up. The more attention that we get from someone, the more money we can charge, and the more we can influence their choices, right? If I say, this is what we need to buy, and you're watching me and everyone buys it, everybody's going to buy it. So it's not necessarily a malicious, we want to control. It's that is the commodity. That is the commodity of our days. And we as humans only have a limited amount of attention to give. So it's kind of up to us to say, how much of my attention am I going to give to people making money off of it?
It's like when you see, like, I don't know, a new trailer for a movie. Say Spider-Man releases a new trailer, and they're like, "Oh, we spotted this in this trailer, right?" And you click on the link, right? You go to it, and then what they tend to do is they'll put the video at the top, and then they'll write exactly what they see in the video. See it all the time. And I look at the video, I never read the text, and I go, and I'm like, I've looked at it and gone, what is the point of you text? Well, I've just seen it in the video. I don't need to read you anymore. Goodbye. It's all visual. And if it's short and visual, that's where the money's at, isn't it? And that's why TikTok works so well, and why it's dangerous as well. I mean, like, I'll sit and work, and I'll be like, wow, I've been looking at this for 2 hours. What? It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. Apparently, TikTok is actually not a moneymaker. It could make money, but that's not its goal. Its business model is to learn how humans think.
Ooh, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. I don't know how much I like that. Yeah, that must be.
Although I don't think this was part of its intention. What we're seeing in our offices is it's telling people what to think. And I don't think that was intentional.
No, that's just like something that just ends up developing, like evolving on its own self. And then before they know it, they're like, so we didn't plan on this, but this is what it's giving us. And we need to exploit this as much as humanly possible because this is a way to now make money off of it.
It's when you start getting, you need to buy a Toyota. You need to buy a Toyota.
Hey, should we buy a Toyota?
Guys, I don't know about you, but all of a sudden I had this like really strong need to go to the Toyota dealership.
Yeah. So weird. We were making the joke the other day because we're like, we should use subliminal messaging to get people to donate to Pod Aid. So like every so often just flash the Pod Aid number.
Right.
Yeah. There it is. There it is.
What you're on about.
Yeah. It needs to be quicker though. It needs to be quicker. A teacher that I had really taught me the importance of subliminal messaging and how quickly it can be absorbed by some. Some of us, completely right by our heads. We never even noticed it going by. But then he was at a Marilyn Manson concert with his kids. And the guy was showing, he was in the back with tech. He's a very techie dude. He's head of the Film and Dramatic Literature Club and all that stuff. So he was very, technologically driven. And he's in the back watching the guy use the lasers and set the programming, all that stuff. And he's like, what's this? And he's like, oh, this is where we pump in subliminal messaging. And he's like, it's nothing like as bad as like go kill the president. It's something like, war bad or, oil bad, something along those lines. And he's like, watch this. And he's like, Bush is a prick. And this just tells you what time it was. Right. And he does it, flashes it. It goes away, not even a blink of a second. Almost like the scene in Fight Club with the,
I knew you were going to mention that.
Yeah, exactly. And so he does that. And then not even 3 minutes later, Manson's in there. He's like, blah, 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 blah. And he puts down the mic and he's like, fuck Bush. And he's like, see, there it is.
It worked. There it went.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I mean, like, this is a new thing, though, right? Is this the new thing, or has this been because we forget social media has been around for a long time?
No, it's very new because the algorithms are getting smarter and smarter. The more people that are on it, the more information that it gets, the more that it can feed people what they want, which keeps people on it, which keeps people more engaged in their screens than in their real lives, which starts to make real life suffer dramatically, which then makes people want to escape more into their pretend world. So it is changing and it is getting worse. And I can say that so confidently. I mean, like in my lifetime, I'm not saying it's the worst it's ever been in the history of civilization, but in terms of the impact that social media is having on mental health, on kids, on families, I mean, you guys, it's devastating what we're seeing in therapy right now. And therapists and parents and teachers and doctors are just going, we don't even have any idea how to help, because these kids are in these underworlds at such deep levels that they do not feel like they have the freedom to leave because that's their society, and they are being so harmed by them. And parents are scared to ask them to put their phone away or to leave the world because they're afraid of taking their world away from them, right? So it's a very, very painful and difficult, and not, if there was an easy solution, I would be sitting here suggesting it. I think what my goal and purpose is in communicating this is that we need to be talking about it, and we need to address that there's some really, really harmful things that are happening right there behind these kind of really glossy, fun, silly things.
I really wanted to Homer Simpson you for a second, Jenny, because you were like, this is the worst. This is at least the worst I've seen. I'm like, the worst you've seen it so far, because it can get so much worse. With the exception, and I feel exactly the way you just stated it, Jenny, is exactly the way I feel, because like they've built these lives around the YouTube videos they watch, the socializing that they do with their friends, and I live in the middle of the woods. Like, you don't know very much about me, Jenny. I live in the northernmost part of. You're gonna find out a little bit more about me.
I'm so excited.
I live in the northernmost part of Vermont, right on the Canadian border. I live in the woods, completely in the woods. Like we chose the spot because it's we're surrounded by nature. We think there's something really important to that. It's
like,
also where
get off my land.
pretty much. That's where we live, and I love it for that up here for that reason. But it's like my kids tend to suffer. Like, I'm from a very developed neighborhood where there was 50 kids down my block and all that stuff, and they don't have that. So I find it to be a little more important that they have this in their life so they can stay connected to their friends, so they don't feel alone in the world that we've kind of curated for them. But it seems like point in time, I support, like, my son is a very smart kid. That's not just me tooting my own horn. Like, we had to get an IQ test for him and everything. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're the first one. He's a very bright boy, and he's also very sensitive. We knew there's something kind of not wrong with him by any stretch of the imagination, something different about him than the rest of the kids, because you see them grow, blah blah, and he's very, very bright. We were doing our homework the other day, me and my daughter, and she struggles because she has the ADD, and she struggles with concentrating on her math. Where my son, I'm kind of looking across the table and I'm like, hey, how you doing over there? Because I expect him to be going through the same route, being like, oh, okay, well, whatever, everything else in the world's more important. Whereas my daughter struggles, my son, I'm like, how you doing? He'd be like, I'm done. I'm like, yeah, let me see that. I slide it over and it's perfect. Everything's done right. The extra questions are filled out. Everything's like things that I'd be like, it would have taken me 5 minutes to understand what this was. You blew right by it and had no problems at all. You absorbed it all. You understand it all. So now you may go, play the video game, whatever it is. And because he's kind of showing these skills to be very in tune with his video games and stuff, I don't see a problem with it as long as there's no ill effects from it. But I don't know if I'm just like kind of fueling the fire that it might be a problem someday, or if I'm just trying to be an understanding parent. What do you think? Not judgment on me.
I think I think it has everything to do with if the content is not harming your kid, it has everything to do with time. Like, how much time are they getting in the real world? Because my biggest issue with video games is if they're not harmful.
Yes.
Is it's very hard to get a kid to empty the dishwasher and to have the brain capacity to do something, all the slow and boring things in life, if they are used to, I just tap a button and all these incredible things happen every time I do anything. I can like push a button and I made a museum. I pushed a button and I colored a picture. That starts training them to not have the capacity for those deeper work and deeper thinking and really boring things that real life requires. And we are seeing so much of that in high school and college students now. Like, they don't know how to drive, but they can program, blah, 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 because driving requires slowing down, doing slower things. So I say it's really all about time, keeping your limits under 2 hours a day. And making sure that they're in those slow, boring work of real life that pays off as much of the day as possible.
Well, if you think about it in the terms of driving, and I'm very sorry, Alex. I know you want to talk. I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'm very sorry. I'm sorry.
Where's the finger?
He's down below because he's like, Tom's on a fucking rant. I'm going to cut off my fingers now. He doesn't care about my fingers anymore. The relationship's dissolving in front of you, Jenny. It's okay. So
I know
a license meant freedom to our generation, correct? Like, you became a certain age, you got a license, and you got the freedom to be able to just go where you wanted to and do what you wanted to. And of course, that's not just an American thing. That's also a UK thing. We've had this conversation about the road trip and how Alex doesn't see it the same way we do, whatever the fuck ever. But that meant freedom to us, whereas the social media, wow, it sounds so old, where social media is a freedom to them because they can do whatever the fuck they want anyways with social media, so they don't need that freedom, I guess. Maybe. Well,
I would say, I mean, these are just my theories and my personal interviews with students. They don't. So many of them don't know how to be with people face to face without what social media has allowed them is a way to curate their other people's experiences of them. And so the moment that I really learned this, I was doing a group that was actually for healing from media issues. And the beginning of it, in my day, we would have called this an icebreaker, right? So you broke up you had two people, and all they had to do was for 1 minute, they introduced themselves, said 3 things about who they were. And during that minute, the other person had to do nothing but listen, just listen for 60 seconds. And then the timer went off and they switched. And one person just listened with eye contact to the other person, introduced themselves. And then we came back to the group and you introduced your person, right? This is not deep therapy. The students that were in that group, it was a mixture of all different ages. The students that were in that group said that they had never felt that vulnerable in their whole life, that they weren't used to people listening to them, someone giving them 100% of their attention. And they were so self-conscious because they couldn't control how the other person was perceiving them.
I use this psychology and scare acting. I gotta say.
I mean, that's how used to, like, I can make this look the way it looks. I can make you think the way I want you to think about me. And so something like a license or something like going and hanging out with a group of friends is like so exposing.
Wow.
So exposing.
It's a weird situation with the kids and the video games and stuff. I mean, when I've got a 14-year-old, and I don't know if I can say this. I'll say this. I'll ask him, and if he doesn't want me to keep it in, I'll edit it out. But yeah, I've got a situation with him at the moment where if like he said, he doesn't empty the dishwasher, or he won't do the housework, he won't tidy his room or whatever. And then I was very firm with him. You know, my ex would call me up, or a wife. They'll both call me up, and they'll be like beside themselves. I don't know what to do with him. I can't get him to do anything. And I was like, well, just take his Xbox off him. And, you know, you just saying about that is his world. Wow. You should have seen the reaction when we actually took his Xbox off him. Like, he literally closed down. I don't care. You couldn't shout at him. You couldn't encourage him. His whole world had gone. And you couldn't get him to do anything, even if you wanted to. And it was like a bar dragging him out of his room by his ankles. And there was nothing he could do. And I was kind of like, well, what do we do now? So there was no positive reinforcement. There was no negative reinforcement. It was just like nothing. Terrible, you know? So you must see this an awful lot, right?
All of the time. And it does. I still do remain hopeful. But I just feel so bad for everyone. I mean, it's a very, very hard situation we have found ourselves in.
Yeah.
Now, how can we do something like Alex did? Because that's not an unreasonable response in my mind to, you know, kind of like get someone to be aware that they're doing something, be like, hey, this is what's be. How can we put this situation forward without making it seem like, you know, like we're ending the world for them? Like, how can we make them aware that this is going on without? I mean,
addiction is real, right? Addiction is real. And it's especially, 14 is such a vulnerable age, especially for a boy. And so it's like there's this sense of I can't control anything in my world. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I belong. And here I know who I am and where I belong. And it just happens to be an incredibly addictive space that real life can never match. So it's really, I mean, we say this over and over and over again. I promise you, your kid wants time with you more than they want anything else. If you are going to set boundaries with your kid and their screens, you have to replace it with you. And you have to be like, you know what? You don't have the Xbox, but you've got me all day. What do you want to do? Yes. You want to talk? You want to play games?
Then you got to compete with Fortnite.
Right. And that's like Fortnite, old man.
Right. And right. But that's what they really want. That's the very heart of this addiction is I want to belong and I want to be connected. And you guys already know this, but there's nothing a kid wants more than that kind of connection with their dad. Nothing.
my youngest, this will be the last thing too, because we've already run out of time. But first of all, Jenny, I got to say this conversation is so important to have, and it's such an interesting conversation. I really do feel like we need to have you come back on so we can continue this conversation. The only bad thing about the form that we chose is that we have like an hour interview, and then we kind of go on to catch up, me and Alex, because we always have so much going on. We never get to talk anymore. Yeah. So I really want you to come back on eventually. As soon as we can get you back on, I would love to continue this. The sooner the better. But my youngest, he likes his devices, but he doesn't have as much access. I mean, he I guess he does have as much access. He has his own tablet, he has a Switch, he has anything that he could choose from to do it. But instead, like last night and this morning, he's really into developing his own board games right now. That's what he likes doing. He likes you to play. Yes. So last night I was watching The Sopranos. I had to go to work, and that's how I kind of like. It sounds really unhealthy, but it's true. I mean, I'm honest with myself. I was trying to like basically like blank out the time in between me having to go, because I don't want to think about going to my soul crushing job for the night. I want to think about everything else in the world except that. So I'm watching Sopranos, and I'm, of course, whatever. But anyway, so I'm watching it, and my son says, I made this board game. So I'm like, yep, pause. And I'm like, let's do it. And even though my other kid, he was in playing his video game at the time, so he didn't really want too much to do with it at the moment. I was like, all right, man, you know what? You're on your way to bed. You can do what you want, but I'm going to play this board game. So I turned off all my stuff, and I sat down and I played it with them. And even though it took like an hour to get through the game because he still hadn't developed all the rules and stuff, he was picking them up on the fly. I was like, this is important. This is important to show him that Tom, this will get my attention.
It's so beyond important.
Yes.
So far in everything that I've studied and every hope that I can believe that there will be out there for kids specifically healing from the trauma that this has caused and the addiction, it is relationship. You are literally healing your kid, providing them with resilience for problems that they're going to face, whether that's in a virtual space or in a real space. It's way beyond important.
Best parent ever. See that? If anyone's, I want them to use this in the court case later. when they're like, Tom's a real asshole, I'm like, no. You listen to Jenny. She's a real doctor, and she said I'm a good guy. You're my character witness. Alex,
I'm not a doctor for the record.
Oh, well, more doctor than I'll ever be. I'll tell you that much, Breezy. So I'll give it to you. Honorary doctor.
Is our time up? Alex, are you the timer?
No. What I'd like to do is I'd like to tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you, and some advice, little bits of advice.
Yeah. So you can find me at mediatrauma.com, and there's a website up now. There's a new website being developed, and we're specifically focused in on training therapists on how to deal with these issues, because they're almost all the issues that are showing up in our offices now.
Jenny, I've been curating. I love October. Halloween's one of my favorite holidays. I try to fill October full of spooky guests. But if you have the time, I would after this. I know we have your email. I would like to email you. I'd like to bring you back on in October. I'd like to continue this conversation.
Well, I'm out in October, so I could maybe pick up November.
Okay. Well, we were trying to. Here's the side note, guys, and I know we're trying. Me and Alex have been going hard at this for 3.5 years now.
We're trying to take a break in November.
We are. We're trying to take like a 2-month break to kind of figure out what we want to accomplish.
More of a hiatus than a break than a kind of. Let's see if we.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. So I'm in the same boat. I'm taking a sabbatical the month of October.
Excellent.
So when you guys regroup, if you guys regroup, I would love to see you.
That's one thing that we have taken, and I don't want anyone to get concerned that does love what me and Alex do. This is not me saying we're done with this. We don't want to do this anymore. This is saying like we want to take a new approach at things. We want to figure out what we want to accomplish with this, because we set out goals and now we've kind of accomplished these goals. We want to see what we can do to continue the conversation and keep it fresh, because one thing that keeps on coming when we have these side conversations, we love working with one another. We found each other on the internet, like every man should find another man on the internet, and we really enjoyed the conversation. We want to keep it going, but we want to make sure that it stays fresh, that it stays like something we enjoy doing, because it becomes a chore, then it's just, who wants to do that? We did this.
We're going to create a network called You Don't Suck. That's what
we're
going to do.
You don't. So yes, when we come back, we would love to get you back on, because this is so important to talk about. I think this is one of the most important things we've ever talked about, actually. And I'm not.
Well, and hopefully we're supposed to have our book out in January, so maybe we can talk about that.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes,
so, I mean, we don't know what USUK will be, but Tom Bruner will definitely be about. So we'll we'll definitely get you back on. But thank you so much for joining us, Jenny. Honestly, genuinely, really enjoyed it's troubling. It's a troubling time, but I'm glad we've got heroes like you working on it. We're on it, guys. We're on it. That's you. All right. So thank you for that.
Thanks for making the world a brighter place, guys.
Oh, thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great day.
You too.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jenny Black.
Jenny Black, everybody.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. What we're going to do now is we'll let you get on with your day. Me and Tom are going to nip on over to the later lounge, which is where we kind of stare in each other's eyes and tell each other how much we love each other.
Wonderful.
We do.
Wonderful.
It's really good for us.
Important that every couple has that time.
It's true.
Absolutely.
It's true.
Except my wife's staring at me now like, what is...
She's like, what the fuck do you mean? I have this relationship with you. I actually do things with you. This man's across the Atlantic Ocean. You spend more time with him, you prick.
Where are you, Tom?
I live in uppermost Vermont. Alex is in Shrewsbury, UK.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are separated by an Atlantic Ocean. We do something the Titanic never could. We crossed. So we are one step above a 1920s steamship. Yay for us.
Yet we're less famous.
Yeah, I know, right? What's that? We should sink, Alex. If we sink with a fucking iceberg, we're gonna be top notch. We're gonna be on all the newspaper headlines.
I think Jenny's frozen up.
Funny. Yeah, I know. We froze Jenny with our comedy.
Yeah, we killed the feed, haven't we, with our Titanic talk?
Probably. It's like, oh, you want to talk Titanic, dude?
You want to sing? You want to know what sinking feels like? Here you go.
Before we leave, I know we're still recording and stuff, but before we leave for the day, I do want to talk to you really quick. And it's positive stuff, not negative. Positive.
Oh, okay. Cool. Amazing. I don't know what to do about Jenny. I don't know if she's gone. She might still be here. She might be not.
She might be. Should we just remove her without trying to seem rude? Jenny, if you can hear us, we're going to take your picture. We're going to take you off, but this is not to be rude in any form or fashion. We just don't know what to do with this exact moment. So if you agree, don't say, oh, there she's gone. All right.
That wasn't like, oh my God, she's gone. Hey, I didn't need to be rude. I think, should we just go over to the...
Get over.
Let's just
taxi.
Let's just taxi. There we go.
You know, I really wish that taxi driver knew the words of BO because that stunk. All right.
I mean, even if it was Links Africa or you have Axe Africa, don't you? I mean, even if that's a stab in the dark. I mean, even at least I smell Links or Axe Africa and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's 1998 again. You know what I mean? I remember school.
Okay, so here's a good question. That was an amazing conversation before I continue this. Jenny Black was phenomenal. And once again, we weren't blowing smoke. That it is such an important conversation to have, and I do want to continue it. What was the cologne like? If you think about like school dances, obviously you guys had school dances, right?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So 8th grade school dance. What's the cologne you're putting on to go and try to rouse the interest of the young Fraulines?
Okay, so we're both kind of from the same era. So this is going to be an interesting one. Okay, so you had CK1.
Oh, you motherfucker! Yes,
and you had Blue Water, Davidoff Blue Water, Cool Water, Cool Water.
Okay, so that's like the light blue stuff, right?
Yeah. But that was everywhere.
Okay, so I agree with the CK1. CK1 was gonna be mine. I was like, that's the one that everybody wanted. Mm-hmm. But if you couldn't afford that, it was Bod. Bod was really big at the time with that huge ass
Versace
bottle.
blue jeans.
What?
Versace blue jeans.
Versace, like Versace.
Yeah, Versace.
I wasn't that cool. It was Bod, Axe, Stetson. Stetson was a clone that everyone really liked. That's a very American thing that has like a lariat and all that type of stuff, like a rope on it, so you can tell cowboys wear it. And what was the one with the B in the green bottle that everyone had? Brute. That was a big one. Was that a big?
Or what's it called? Old Spice.
Yes, Old Spice. But that was like Old Spice was still a cologne at this time, and it wasn't necessarily like I feel like they really started pumping out sprays once. Okay, all right. Wow.
Do you remember that?
I've never even seen that. No, I've never even seen that.
That was everywhere, man. It was everywhere.
Wow. It looks like something you drink.
Yeah, we didn't. See, the thing is, kids.
We didn't drink that. Sorry, we're not
shit. We weren't in a Tide Pod era.
That is our Tide Pod.
That's a win for us, right? Love it. What were we talking about before we came on the show? And I was like, save it. Save,
We were talking about Sopranos, and how people like to recycle actors, and I was watching in the if anyone, spoilers to anyone that's never seen Sopranos, maybe you're watching it for the first time because the new movie's coming out, in which case I'm sorry, but so if you're watching Sopranos for the first time, don't have any information, tune off right now, because we're going to say some things that happen in it that you really
no, fuck you, man. If you've not seen The Sopranos, you've had like,
but we know people that haven't, right? We were just barely talking with David earlier this week, and David hasn't seen The Sopranos. So even people that we expect to be up to date on stuff that we like, he still hasn't seen it. So let's just say, okay, so put Big Pussy, a character in the show, he ends up flipping between the first and the second season, and he starts talking with this cop, this FBI agent, who is basically coaching through the whole deal, and he's this big Italian dude. Well, that dude, I don't remember what happens to him as a cop, but I know he shows back up later on in the show as a dude who's in a male on male relationship with this other dude. And he even escapes because they find out that he's been like going to these clubs and stuff. And it's the same character. And I wonder what it is about people recycling actors. Either it's just the need for great talent, or if it's, I know we used him, but if we just use him again, nobody's going to notice. What do you think that's all about?
I think it's about the shortage of Italian Americans in the film industry. I mean, it's a stereotyping thing, isn't it? It's definitely a stereotyping thing. It's like what we were talking about with Joss, Jonathan Joss. Is like, he's a Native American. How do you say it now? There's a new way of saying it.
Native. I think American Indian. I think
an American. He's Native American. There's not so many of those guys knocking around in Hollywood, so you will see reoccurring actors appear in different roles. So it's just one of those things. If definitely supply and demand. That's a weird way of putting it, isn't it? But yeah, definitely that.
I don't know. It's just something interesting. I kind of caught up when I was watching.
That's why Scorsese keeps using the same actors because there's nobody else.
But as I'm rewatching The Sopranos, like I realize still how brilliant it is and how socially aware it is. And the thing is, like, it makes me very nostalgic. If anyone's ever listened to the show before, they know that my family hails from South Jersey. So all the things that you see in the opening credits of driving through, New York City and the New Jersey Turnpike and all that stuff, every time I watch, I'm like, oh man, I remember that. And like, it brings back a lot of great feelings. Now, when you watch that opening, Alex, is it just like an American nostalgia trip for you, or what do you think?
See, when I disappear into a show or a movie, I'm kind of in my element, right? I'm kind of really enjoying. I guess a bit like what Jenny was saying, I'm kind of enjoying being in that moment for that moment, so it's a case of not overindulging. And I guess that's that dopamine lack, right? So there are some times when I enjoy movies more than others, and I guess that's that when I'm at that need for that, right? So like what I do is when I hear something like The Sopranos opening, it reminds me of happier times, even though it's a show about some pretty fucking grotesque shit. I'm like, oh no, that was a good time that I was watching that. Totally enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I fuck, man. I don't want to get too crazy deep into it, but I mean, it's just. Of course, Terrence Winter, the phenomenal writer, also responsible for amazing things like Boardwalk Empire. I mean, the man found a niche, and he kind of writes for his audience, which is perfect. He writes for people that love gangster stuff, and he's just so prolific, and he says so much while doing it. I mean, I tend to, because I've seen Sopranos, I know what's going on in the inner workings between the therapy of Tony Soprano and the family workings. I tend to find myself fast forwarding to the bits I want to watch. And I think that threw my wife off this morning because she was kind of like seeing it in the background. And I don't really like watch for the nudity anymore. Like, I don't turn on The Sopranos being like, oh, I'm going to see like 30 sets of titties this episode, because you will. Like, there's lots of nudity. Man owns a strip bar, but I don't really watch it for that. So like, I'll get to the bar scenes where there's nothing really going on. I'm like, yep, fast forward. And then I'll get to the good parts, like the mafia shit that I want to see and the inner workings between the family, and I'll play. And I think they threw her off because she's like, what kind of fucking man am I married to that just doesn't give two shits about titties, but he really cares about what this fat dude has to say?
Exactly. It's all about, that's because you're in it for that the writing and
Yes.
the storyline, you know, and I guess that's why but that's what sets things apart, though, isn't it? I mean, you look at Adventure Time and Gumball and all this shit that's not necessarily for kids, not for kids, and then you look at something like Rick and Morty, Bob's Burgers, and there's always that one that stands out, and that's Rick and Morty. Now, why? It's all because of the writing and how it's all set up. Like there are people that like Bob's Burgers. It's very popular, but BoJack Horseman, you know, but like for us, it stands out. It fits in that jigsaw for us, you know.
Absolutely. I don't know.
But I've been watching House recently.
Yeah, you would say that. I've only watched a couple episodes of House, and that was just based on watching Scrubs. Like they mentioned House, and I was like, oh, I should watch this episode of House they were referring to. That's my knowledge of House. And I'm very familiar with the actor that plays House.
Hugh Laurie, yeah, it's amazing.
Hugh Laurie. So I get that, but what brought you into that?
I've always wanted to watch House. It's always been on the list, but I never got around to doing it. You know, and I'm aware it's very old. It's like 2004, 2005, something like that. So but at the same time, so Sopranos. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm gonna say here and be like, "Hey, Alex, watch Things That Are Relevant." You're like, "Oh yeah, Mr. 99 Sopranos, you fuck." Tell me more about the flip phone, you cunt.
Yeah, but that's what we were talking about, just. And I called The Sopranos a period drama because it is of a different period, it's of a different era, and that's what we were talking about with Jenny. Just it's a different way of life, and kind of House is like that, really, because it's very sort of millennium. What?
Do you know what'd be really fun? Next time we bring Jenny on, maybe we should take clips from like our favorite disembodied or not disembodied families that really don't know how to act with one another, and show her clips of these things and be like, hey, how would you help these fuckers? What would you say to
like
them?
dysfunctional family. Yeah,
yeah, dysfunctional. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Dysfunctional. Be like, here's a clip from The Sopranos. Tell me how you would fucking
we'd be able to use Rick and Morty and just do the whole show, to be fair. Like the balloon popping
oh
on top.
That'd be fucking fantastic. Like she'd make great content.
Be more ashamed, honey. Jerry, did you not hear what he just said to our daughter?
Oh man, we need 2 crows in our life. Don't you think that's a thing? We should
2 crows.
2 crows.
Oh, you guys.
Rick and 2 crows. 100 years, 1,000 years of Rick and 2 crows. 1,000 seasons.
I love it. So yeah, we need to go back and we need to sort of re-emphasize what we're going. The people that watch and listen to our show, that people that do, we're going to take a break. It's not the worst thing in the world. We're going to take a month or maybe 2, just to sort of think about things, because it's not that it's this. Okay, so we used to do this thing because we used to love it and enjoy it, right? We love hanging out together. We love chatting, and it got to a point. We still do,
yes,
but it's more of a job, more of a chore now, and we want to make it enjoyable again. So we're going to start looking at ways to do things differently, whether that means canning USUK, whether it means making something new. The only thing that's going to be consistent is that we're going to stay together. USUK may carry on, but we just want to look at things first. Want to take a bit of a break, innit? See,
I'd like to. I mean, I guess we're gonna have this conversation now instead of just sticking around afterwards. I would like to keep USUK the name, and maybe just not emphasize as much about it being a network. I think that's really kind of the problem, is like we can use USUK as a banner because that is what it is, US-UK relationships. And I want to keep What's the Difference because I love that bumper. I don't ever want to get rid of that bumper, dude. I'm sorry. Like Zap Brannigan saying our names and all that type of stuff. I think we've built something about it, but we just need to like clearly define what it's going to be or what we want to get from it, because we clearly love interviewing people. We really do. But the thing is, I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to keep the conversation going with people that we tend to lose focus on the other stuff. So maybe we'll kind of figure it out. It's not the end of us. It is just we need to kind of put our sights on something instead of just kind of going all willy-nilly. And I also think that we're also trying, especially you, Alex, and like I include myself just because I'm doing some stuff with it, but you're really getting pulled in 1,000 directions right now. And it's really hard to focus on one thing when you got 50 other things lined up behind you trying to get your attention, including family life. So we don't know what it's going to be. It's not the end of us. It's not the end of everything as we know it. It's just, how are we going to make this work with the busy lives that we lead and make it so that it's still enjoyable to do? Because if it becomes a chore, we're not going to want to do it anymore. And that's the problem. It's not
that though. It's like, okay, I've got a podcast today. I don't feel like doing it. It's going to suck. All right. And we don't want to do that. We want to make good stuff. You know, we enjoy being around.
the thing is, we both admitted to this fact as well, that we also have this feeling. But then the moment you and me start talking, this is how we've established the fact that we want to keep a relationship going, is that we've had this conversation. We're like, oh, fuck, dude, like thinking about having to do something extra on the weekends on top of everything else seems like a chore. But the moment that we sit down, the moment we start talking, we fall right back into it, and we love doing that. So we need to figure out how to encapsulate that as the experience all the time, instead of having like a week that leads up to dread to doing something extra outside of our activities and then fall in love with one another all over again.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards doing What's the Difference, but calling it USUK, not What's the Difference, just USUK, doing the same thing but live. I feel like I'm kind of leaning towards that. It's not what we decided yet. We haven't even talked. This is essentially a private conversation we're having on a podcast right now. But I thought, fuck it. Well, no, let's be honest and open. Like, I feel like doing, like, instead of Wednesday Night Live, I mean, we could still probably do Wednesday Night Live, but doing this live every week, but as USUK, not as What's the Difference, just USUK. That's it. Nothing else. And then we can keep up with Yelling at Clouds as well, because that's fun as fuck. I love doing Yelling at Clouds. So.
The one thing is, like, how do we keep the bumper? Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, I agree with everything you said. The only thing I don't...
just says USUK, doesn't it? I can probably edit that out. Let's have a listen back.
Okay.
You're listening to USUK.
All right, listen up, Spuds. This is Zap Brannigan, master of time, space, and everything else in between. And, winner of this year's Modesty Award. You're listening to USUK. What's the difference with Al and Tom?
No, he says USUK as a break. You think I can take that out?
You think you take that out? Ooh,
yeah.
Maybe we'll show people what it could be, because that's great. Like that, if we could just take out that little "what's the difference" part, dude, that'd be fucking baller.
Yeah,
I can't lose Zap Brannigan saying my name, Alex. I can't handle that.
We won't. And you know, all the stuff will still be on the network as well. So we'll be like, yo, go back and listen to What's the Difference. Remember the old show we used to do? Like, it's all good. It's still there. Go and listen to it. You know,
and you know what we could do if we did that? We could actually turn Wednesday Night Live to be the same thing, where we could have David some weeks, because we don't want to lose David either. That's the other important thing. Like, and that's not to say anything about Eric. Like, Eric does an amazing show, but it'd be kind of hard to bring him into this little bit of it. But David's been such an integral part to Wednesday Night Live and to filling it. And David's actually going to fill in for me here in a couple minutes. So he's such an important part. I don't want to lose. Yeah, next week. Yeah, that's what it was. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't want to lose him either. So maybe like the weeks that we don't get a guest, we just be like, all right, David, come on, buddy. We're not gonna have a guest this weekend. We just want to chat with you, which would make it easier on us and take away some of the stress from that too. Yeah. So that's a good idea. So definitely, you guys keep your ears peeled, because there'll be more coming. We are still going to do our What's the Difference for the fall of October. We already have 3 of the guests figured out. They're going to be fun guests. And we have an amazing thing coming up. By the time you guys listen to us, it'll be over. But just for old time's sake, let's just do it. No, you don't want to?
Sorry, I'm sitting. Do you ever sit on your wallet and your ass goes numb?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, as well, this is rubber, and it's got like Batman imprints.
I'm glue. Yes, right? You're rubber. I'm glue. It looks like a tire tread.
Yeah, that's what it is basically, but with Batman symbol. So now, what I've got on my ass is
it's a bat symbol.
Tiny little bat symbols.
Batman owns my ass, Tom. I'm just saying, it's true.
It's like Batman's kicked me up the ass with a set of size 11s and on the bottom. Anyway, so by the way, as well, guys, if you have any suggestions or comments, or you want to get in touch with us, or there's any way, like, the best way you can support a podcast or something you enjoy is to share the shit, like it, and watch it. That we don't ask for any money or anything like that. All I've ever said is like, share, and subscribe, and we will work with that. So please get in touch. But yes, in 2 days' time, because I'm going to edit this up and release it for Monday, because this is what I do. And so in 2 days' time, we have Pod Aid. You see me wearing the hat.
Yes, great hat.
And I've been working hard making the little mini vlogs that we're going to be playing throughout the episodes. We have most of the guests are confirmed, super confirmed. We have the venue, we have our sponsors, thanks to Reach. Here's the logo for Pod Aid, and we're doing this for Lingen Davis, which is a cancer fund here in Shrewsbury. And we have a venue Shrewsbury Town, the community. There's Alfie again, my kid. And that's the Shrewsbury Town, the community hub. And that's outside the football stadium in Shrewsbury. And you know what? I'm having a lot of fun. I'd say a lot more fun. I think what it is, and I explained this to the wife in the car, I had such high expectations of what this was going to be that when it didn't start going the way it was meant to, I was kind of like getting really upset with myself and frustrated when I wasn't hearing back off emails and wasn't getting as frustrated. Yeah?
Yeah, 100%, dude. I was very concerned because I'm like, we developed this thing, we designed this thing, and we're like, this is not what it's turning out to be. But then I think we actually had a conversation. Don't worry, we're kind of running really low on time, but we kind of figured out, no, we're putting way too much pressure on ourselves, especially with like the getting sponsors of it all. Like that was driving me up the wall. Me and Alex were sending out fucking so many emails trying to get sponsors for this event. I'm like, okay, you know what? We can't do it that way. We need to stop focusing on that. And what we need to do is focus on the donations of it all once the show is actually going. And that's what it became. And I think that took a lot of stress off us as well.
It really did. And the way I've explained this is our first time. Our awkward first time. This is our first fumble underneath the sheets. Do you know what I mean? So next time we're going to be porn star in it.
If there's next time,
I would like to do it again. Whether it's. I mean, like the way we're doing this is Pod Aid is its own separate thing. But I feel like what we're doing right now is we're learning that you can't do this in 3 months. Like we've tried to. You definitely need to take your time with it. You know, really slowly,
like a year. And I think it has to be, unfortunately, a universal thing that people want to contribute to. Like, even though cancer is something everyone should want to contribute to, because it's a local Shrewsbury, which is not to downplay the importance of it, but because it's not like St. Jude's Hospital or something that's a very popular hospital in America. Because it's not something like that, not everybody wants to be as much of a part as they can, and my internet's starting to dip down, so we might want to do this.
Yeah, but what I'm going to do quickly is rather than go into loads of shit, because we talked to you about this a bit of we're figuring shit out, I'm going to play you one of the little vlogs. This is more to see how it looks alive.
Should we say this is what's the difference first before we do that, and then we can just send that for the video?
What do you mean? No, this is one of the little vlogs I've made for Pod Aid. So let's watch this and then we'll come back. Give me a sec. Right, so just left Lincoln Davis Centre now. Thank you, Sally, and everybody that spoke to us there. As you can see, you know, all this money that we're trying to raise will have a positive effect, right? So the NHS doesn't always fund everything for people that have got cancer. So you have to rely on charities like Lincoln Davis for the extra bits, the extra bits of treatment, the scanners, all these kind of things that make life easier. Because, like Sally said on a vlog earlier, rather than make people sort of travel to the faraway places and get scanned, they can do it here. You know? So what we're doing is important. So any money that you guys have, it's quid, £10, £100 here, it goes towards a great cause. Again, thank you so much to the guys at Lincoln Davis for giving me the tour and speaking to us, and we'll catch you guys later on in the show. Yeah, excellent. I need to work on the audio for that.
I love it. No, it's brilliant. It's something I'd expect to see, and I like it a lot, man. I really do.
The idea was to make it with my phone to show people they can make it with whatever they got around them. So even if I'd have had because we have just picked up funding for cameras and stuff, but even if I'd have got that before then, I probably would have done it with my phone anyway. Okay, so yeah, let's tell people what else is going on at the moment. Tom, do you want to tell people about the shows we got?
Yes, we have Yelling at Clouds with Eric Pfluger, a prolific artist, very, very brilliant dude, and he likes to go on rants for 16 hours, but we've crunched into an hour-long show, and this week's episode is Attack of the 1970s in Space, and as you see, he likes to draw characters and whatever he might be that's correlating to what he's talking about. An amazing episode. Eric's a brilliant dude. Please take a listen. He does it with our friend young Alex Whiteley across from me. We have Wednesday Night Live every single week. We do Wednesday Night Live where it's sit down at the pub essentially, but we do it over the the internets, and we just talk, we deep dive on stuff. We have a great time and just laugh our brains out. We have What's the Difference podcast, this very show that you're listening to right now, and this is essentially a love story between two dudes that met on the internet and we don't understand each other. Last week's Tanisha Collins episode was such a fantastic thing, and she's such a brilliant young lady. She was in the movie with Kevin and fatherhood, and she is fantastic. So definitely check out that episode. All these things can be found on our website, which is USUKnetwork.com. It is a great website, and when you're going through that website and you like how easy you can find things and how you can attain everything, that's not because of us. That's because of our good friends over at WebOrch.com. WebOrch.com is a website developing business. That's what they do. They don't make kites. They make websites. Hey, that rhymes. And they will make a brilliant website for you, whether you're trying to sell something, or yourself, not in that bad way, but in the good way, or you have an Etsy or whatever it might be. You kind of need a website because social media is never going to be enough, unfortunately. To tell people that you're serious about what your passion is, a website is what you need. So if you want a great, fantastic, amazing website, reach out to the guys at WebOrch.com and tell them that the USUK gentleman sent you.
Amazing.
Thank you. All right.
Right. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, Jenny, for today.
Thank you, Alex.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, TV Guestbert, as well, for organising that interview.
Thank you. Yes.
Let's do this. Okay, this has been What's Difference podcast. I've been Alex Whiteley.
And I'm Tom Bruno.
Take him to the Matthews Bridge.
Hi, this is Ickis from Our Real Monsters. And I would like very much to ask you, if you don't mind, to watch the USUK Network with Tom, Bruno, and Alex Whiteley. Oh, that's all. I have to go flush myself now.